Zola Kay from Smithton.
Anne Nichols from Marriwa.
Peg Johnson Smithton.
Mary Hammond Smithton.
Errol Moran Smithton.
Leonie Posey Smithton.
Stuart Smithton. Ryan Rogers Smithton.
Dorothy Poppier Smithton.
Thelma Ray Smithton.
Nancy Azimoyu.
Yvonne Lewison Stanley. Jane Ness Smithton. Betty Harris Marriwa.
Kevin Harris, Tarawa.
Peter Berry from Stanley, and we've also got the CIA there because you're recording every week. If you object, we can turn it off. That's for Pat Harrison, who's not able to be here today.
Okay, folks, well, my name is Alan Marshall, Alan John Marshall, not to be confused with the Alan Marshall that wrote I Can Jump Puddles.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little bit more about him later. I was born in England, in a place called Lancing in Sussex. That's right on the south coast, if anyone knows any of England. Right on the south coast, opposite France, in 1941. And that's the early years of the war. And the earliest memories I can have is I must have been about 2.5, 3. Sitting on mum's lap because I couldn't sleep because of the bombs and the air raid sirens and all that stuff going on. I remember that very, very clearly. And towards the end of the war, when the doodlebugs, the B-1s, were coming over, I remember that very clearly, being in the air raid shelter, which was under mum and dad's bed, Anderson shelter I think they called it, and that's to stop the house falling on us and if it collapsed. I remember that very clearly. And whenever I hear the sirens on the films, you know they play them on films now, sends shivers down my spine. My schooling, I left school when I was 16, but even before that, very, very early days, it must have been about when I was 6 or 7, I did my first solo journey. And that was going about 3 miles on the train for 3 old pence. You know the little 12-sided threepenny pieces? That's what it cost me to go to Worthing and back to Lancing. And when I got back home, I was scolded, you know, you can believe it, by mum and dad, going out on my own for 3 miles for 3 pence, wasting my money. But that was the beginning of my travelling life. And I'll show you what I looked like when I was really young. This is me when I was really young. That's before my teeth started changing, you know.
You would be the first one that ever flew, would you?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Like a trotter. Yes. My sister lives in Ibiza in Spain. Anyone heard of Ibiza? It's an island in the Mediterranean. It's the south of Spain. And I visited there numerous times. I see her probably once every 6 years. Apart from that, I haven't got mum and dad now, of course. But so I'm over here on my own, and I live down in Cygnet in the south of Tasmania. Can anyone not hear me, by the way? Okay. Hear me okay? Good. You people might be too young for this, but does anyone here know what I mean by a senior moment? The most famous senior moment I can remember is in Ibiza. I was out on the promenade, the seafront, having a cup of coffee. And I packed up to go after coffee, folded up the newspaper and walked outside, and the sun was very low and blinding in my eyes. So I put up the newspaper to shield my eyes from the sun. I'd gone about 10 yards. I thought, oh damn it, I've left the newspaper behind. Okay, I've spoken about my first solo journey. My first job was in Woolworths. That's FW Woolworths. It used to be a 6-penny piece shop, you know, where you could buy anything for 6 pence. And I was sweeping the floors, collecting all the waste paper, and baling up each day. stoking the fire, which was fed on coke, not coke, it's very, very light fuel. I used to get through 2 tons of that hand stoking per month. And I was only 16 when I started that. And after that I went up to London to work as a tea-boy in a film company, a place called Bond Street. Now this was with a company called Stanley Schofield Productions Limited, and they made 16mm films for commercial businesses, advertising, documentaries, that sort of thing. And more recently, when I Googled or searched on the internet for that company's name, I came up with the name Jane Goodall. Does anyone know Jane Goodall?
Something to do with the,
Yeah, she was the one that studied chimpanzees in Africa for quite some time. And it turns out that she was doing the same job as me about 2 years before me. She was the tea boy there in the same company in about 1956. So I sent a letter to her, but I haven't got a reply back. Maybe she doesn't talk to people like me, I don't know. Anyway, in London, I joined up the Sea Scouts, and we used to play around on the Thames there. And via that route, I got into the Royal Navy. Signed up for 9 years as a sick berth attendant. Now, a sick berth attendant is one that learns basic nursing, all the medical subjects and all the administrative needs to service a ship from the medical point of view. You could be a sick baby on a ship and be the only person trained in medicine there, and you'd be directly responsible to the captain. I never got on board ship because I went into radiography within 2 years of being Royal Navy. That's taking X-rays, and that really was the start in what my career continued as for the next 45 years as a radiographer. I trained in radiography at the Royal Naval Hospital Haslar near Portsmouth in Hampshire, and that was a 2-year course then, a civilian course. And after that, qualifying, I went off to Malta in the Mediterranean, served there for 18 months. I had a little tiny dog there which I sort of took care of whilst I was living in the Navy there. His name was Dash, and he was a little tiny soul, about so big, and 6 of the puppies, their mother died after 2 weeks. We think from septicemia, so we farmed out 5 of these puppies. And one little one called Dash I kept in the mess there. And I talk about mess, that's the be all and end all, because this little fellow used to go around the whole of the dormitory, all these different bed spaces, and he loved it. But he had this habit of doing a dollop in people's shoes, right in the middle of shoes. And I saved his life numerous times. But that's Dad. After the Royal Navy, after 9 years, I went back to London to work in a company there. And that was selling skeletons and wall charts and educational materials for medical training. Then with the 3M company, has anyone heard of the 3M company? They make numerous things like Scotch Light, Scotch Bright, and all manner of stuff like that. Underseal was their trade name, the stuff that you spray underneath cars to protect it from the rust. And then I worked in Bristol, at the Bristol Royal Infirmary. And because I don't work too well in a team, I wasn't getting on very well in the main X-ray department there. And the director of radiology, a man called Professor Middlemas, put me into the job of doing the X-rays on the wards and the operating theatres. So I became in charge of that, and that really opened up my life, because I could take on that job and I was improving the quality of the X-rays produced in the portable situation in the wards and the operating theatres, and I really loved it. After 3 years of that, I was getting itchy feet, so I heard about voluntary service overseas, which is a bit like community aid abroad. And they sent you anywhere else in the world that they needed a volunteer to work. you didn't choose where you wanted, you went where they sent you. And I went to East Africa, to Tanzania. That's a big culture shock. The only place I'd been overseas before that was Malta. But Africa was a different thing altogether, very, very different. Still in the end of the colonial period, there was a lot of colonial attitude going on, and I picked up some of that, the patronising thing, they ought to be thankful for us coming here to do this work for them and so on. But they didn't really know that altruism that we try to put forward as the way to go, because they just accepted as you are, which is good. But I did actually, this was 37 years ago now, 37 years ago, and I took a few pictures of the X-rays I was taking, just ordinary coloured prints of the X-rays, and I've kept them now, and they're on the computer. And this is the next one that we're going to come to up here. Here we are. This is one of the X-rays. You ever heard of an IVP? I don't know if you've ever had IVP, you have an injection to look at your kidneys. This is a disease called schistosomiasis. It's where this little tiny fluke burrows through your skin from the water you're walking in or swimming in, and gets in your body and gets into the urinary system and causes a lot of inflammation there. And that's what we're picking up a lot of the time. So you can see that these, the kidneys are a bit inflamed, coming down here into the bladder below. And I'll just go to the next one there. That's the even worse one. You see how they're all inflamed? This is the kidneys here, and the tubes coming down. They're all very much enlarged, and that's one of the problems. And this is the bladder, showing the eggshells of these little tiny things. They lay their eggs in the wall of the bladder and leave the eggshell behind virtually. And that, of course, causes inflammation and all manner of urinary problems. Now, this next one, this is a chest X-ray. I'm sure you've recognised a chest X-ray with the ribs, the heart here, and the diaphragm. And the next one shows you the same chest, slightly darker, and you've got this one here. Now, you might not really understand what that is. It's a different direction. By the way, this woman who had this arrow in her chest stood up for the X-rays. She wasn't lying down, she wasn't creating, she just stood up for these X-rays. And that's from the side, and that is what it was in the surgeon's hand. And I went to the theatre whilst I took this out. Now she's probably 55, something that sort of age, and when you get to that age and you're not married, you've got no children, they think you're a witch. So someone went in at night and tried to bump her off. Now, because she went home after 2 or 3 days, right as rain, she's obviously a witch, so they'd have probably tried it again and we would have seen her again. So that's the sort of culture we're in there. And again, these were taken 37 years ago, so I've still got the records.